بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته.
Wa alaikum salam rahmatullah.
We welcome you all to another session of the Black Imams Roundtable. I am Imam Amin Muhammad. Below me in place, but definitely not in status, is the great Imam of the Boombat, Imam Faheem Lee. And next to him is our resident genius, Imam Naeem Abdullah. And today we're honored, especially honored, to have our esteemed guest and Imam Talib Abdur-Rashid. May Allah tabarak wa ta'ala preserve him. And
Amin.
today we're going to have a discussion on his experience and journey in leadership as an imam, as a community leader, as an elder. So we're going to just have an open discussion and learn. Really, this is a session, like I told you this morning, that many of us neglect to take advantage of the experience of our elders. And we end up making errors and mistakes or things we could have done better because we didn't take that advice. So we want to take this opportunity, as I told you, formulate questions you may have. And, mashallah, if things should go in questions that he don't want, Imam Talib is a black imam. He knows how to handle that. He knows how to fix you and put you straight. So, alhamdulillah, we're going to get right into it, and I will give it to who's going first, Imam Naeem or Imam Faheem? Imam
I'll go.
Barakallahu bikum.
Alhamdulillah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين ورضي الله تعالى عن سادة التابعين وعلماء العاملين وأئمة الأربعة المجتهدين ومقلديهم إلى يوم الدين أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته everyone. Alhamdulillah. I'm not going to take too much time because I believe this is going to be one for the record books. We had other imams here in the past, like Imam Abdur-Rashid, rahimahullah, may Allah have mercy on him.
Amin.
Imam Mutawaf, Abdur-Shahid, may Allah protect and preserve him, and others. And if you all remember those conversations we had with those imams, they were historic, they were legendary, and I believe this is going to be another conversation like that, in that same ranking. So I want to advise all of you to share this video, let everyone know that we're here, share it on your pages, your social media, tag all your friends, let them know, to come through now. And I know if you're on the East Coast, you're either starting or about to finish your Maghrib, but if you hear my voice, share it and come on in and join the conversation. And so that's all I'm going to say for right now. And I'll pass it to Imam Faheem.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
Bismillah wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulihi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Sayyidina wa Habibina al-Mustafa Muhammad ibn Abdullah sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa salam. Wa man tabi'ahum bi ihsani ila yawm ad-din wa ba'd. I would like to welcome you all, of course, to the Black Imams Roundtable. And I'm just following the lead of my imams who came before me, alhamdulillah. And then we have our elder Sheikh Imam Talib. So I'm just here to guard the goat. We got the velvet ropes out tonight because this is a VIP gathering. This is a gala event we got. So, when you come in to these gala events, you got to pay. You know what I mean? So, run that $10 that we ask as a suggested donation, inshallah, for all the people tuning in to help us to reach our weekly goal and help us to continue to do the works that we're doing. You know, you got to beat us. You know, every week. You know, as we encourage you to donate, we also donate as well. So you got to beat us and match us. And y'all great people. You know, you good people. You know, so it ain't enough for you to do it for yourself and 2 other people, and yourself and 5 other people, or yourself or 10 other people. So it ain't enough for you to give $100, $200, $50, $20, because y'all, you know, y'all nice like that, and that's why we love you, and that's why we appreciate you. So make sure we cover that door fee, and as the famous saying goes, drop that bread. You know, alhamdulillah. So again, we are honored. You know, the topic tonight is about leadership, and so we're going to really defer to our leader and our elder Sheikh Imam Talib. And, you know, we were discussing behind the scenes that, you know, we were going to talk, but we're here to listen tonight, as you all are, as we have this esteemed elder and soldier and warrior for a long time in the work of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I'm sure he has many jewels. And then we'll try to supplement with our little stones that we got, inshallah ta'ala. So, again, we thank you all for tuning in. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you all and honor you. And we thank you for your support. We thank you for your attendance. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us immense benefit. Amin. So, Sheikh Talib, take it away, Walter.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على النبي الكريم صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى آله وصحبه وأنصاره أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. Let me just first say, dear brothers and sisters on the line, let me give praise and thanks to Almighty Allah for this opportunity on behalf of the men and women, the young people and the children of Masjidul Akhawiyatul Islamiyah, the Mosque of Islamic Brotherhood, Fee Harlem, to really thank Imam Amin and Imam Naeem, Imam Faheem. You know, African people, we always like long E sound in our names, and they embody that. And I'm really grateful to be able to be on to share. And I have to say that really Imam Amin has been after me for a good while, trying to get me on. And it's only now, as my health has improved after being on medical leave for over 2 years, that I felt I could feel that this was a time for me to come on. And let me say, lastly, before I kind of get into it, that this program by this younger generation of imams, I see, and from the time that I tuned in some time ago, I see this program as being of critical nature for our people. And I took Shahada when I was 20 years old. And I look at people like Sheikh Mutawaf Abdur-Rashid, may Allah preserve him. He is my sheikh. He is my elder. And so unless I've just got insistent young people, I really don't answer to sheikh. I prefer to be called imam. I'm still working on the imam part without any loftier title than that. But some young people, out of respect, they'll call me that, and I answer to it. But you know how our community is nowadays, the community of Muslim Americans of African descent. Every other brother's a sheikh. You know, brothers calling each other Sheikh now, like they used to call each other Ak when I was young. So I'm this Imam, my brother Imam is fine. I wanted to actually leave the forum open so that these three Imams on the line can kind of help guide the conversation. But I did want to read an ayah from the Quran as a way of kind of introducing my concern. So this is from Surah Al-An'am, which is the 6th surah of the Quran, the very last ayah. And Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala says, وَهُوَ الَّذِي جَعَلَكُمْ خَلَائِفَ الْأَرْضِ وَرَفَعَ بَعْضَكُمْ فَوْقَ بَعْضٍ دَرَجَاتٍ لِيَبْلُوَكُمْ فِيمَا آتَاكُمْ إِنَّ رَبَّكَ سَرِيعُ الْعِقَابِ وَإِنَّهُ لَغَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ. This is, Allah says, speaking of himself. Allah says, he is the one who has made you the inheritors of the earth, the Khala'if, plural of Khalifa, inheritors of the earth, and raised some of you in ranks over others so that he may test you in what he has given you. Surely your Rabb, your Lord, is swift in retribution, yet he is also the all-forgiving and merciful God. So in the works of tafsir, of scholarly commentary, not Facebook commentary, not social media commentary, scholarly commentary that is part of our tradition as people of the Sunnah, is the works of Tafsir Tabari and Tafsir Ibn Kathir. So Ibn Kathir says that, Rahimahullah, he says that this statement of Allah, wherein he says that he established you, meaning the human being, as the inheritors of the earth, Ibn Kathir says that this is a statement about generations, that Allah establishes one generation after the other to safeguard the affairs of the earth. And recently, a few months ago, I came across a quote from a 20th century revolutionary psychologist who was born in Martinique and is considered a national hero in Algeria. And his name was Frantz Fanon. And when I was young, like in the 60s, even into the 70s, I would say, Fanon was like must reading for any person of African descent who considered themselves to be an activist, who considered themselves to be, revolutionary, down with the cause. You had to be reading Fanon. You had to have read Wretched of the Earth, Black Skin, White Mass, A Dying Colonialism. And now I meet a younger generation who are the same age as I was back then, and they never even heard of him. If they're African Americans, they never heard of Fanon. And so I came across a quote from Fanon. And he said, each generation must identify the challenge of their generation and take up that challenge or else fail. And when I read that quote from Fanon, it reminded me of this ayah, and now that I am an elder, and as I'm watching the state, the wretched state of Americans of African descent generally, and those of us who are Muslims coming out of that community, I have a great concern as I inch closer to leaving the life of this world. I have a great concern that perhaps we are not measuring up to identifying the challenge of our time and equipping our children, our grandchildren. I have 6 grandchildren now, and I'm really concerned about what kind of world are we going to be leaving them. So having said that, I'm just going to let you all lead us where we need to go.
Barakallahu bikum, Imam. May Allah reward you. That's a great introduction. You left us with a ton of questions to go for. And that last one, I think, is that last point that you made of understanding and stepping up to the challenges of the time. I think that one we want to save to the end, because that will require some direction as well. But let's start at the beginning, since we found out where we can end. When you embraced Islam and when you became a leader among Muslims in our community, what was the challenge of the time? What were the motivating things that pushed you to embrace Islam? And what were the motivating things that pushed you or landed you in leadership? So at the beginning, inshallah.
All right, Bismillah. So I took Shahada in 1971. And so that was like, what, 51 years ago? And I was 20 years old. I'm always amazed when I'm watching television at night and I turn on the History Channel, and I'm sitting there watching my whole youth in segments, like for instance, one of the they refer to 1968 as the year that changed the world. This is the History Channel. I was 17 years old then. The Mosque of Islamic Brotherhood was incorporated in 1967. Same year as Masjid al-Muqminin, also known as the Islamic Revivalist Movement, Imam Talib, same year, 1967. I was actually born under American apartheid, the so-called segregated South. People look at me now and they always associate me with New York, but I'm not from New York. Originally, I'm from Greensboro, North Carolina. I spent my childhood under apartheid, and then my parents got divorced, and my mother packed up my brother and sister and I. Both of them are younger than me, as well as another sister I have who still lives in North Carolina. She brought us to New York. And I used to spend my summers. I don't know if Black folk even do this anymore, but back then, we used to go back down south every summer. You know, I would live in New York for like 10, 11 months, then we would go down south. And when I was a little boy, I used to sit in front of the television set in New York, watching the news as the civil rights and later the Black Power movement unfolded. And so this created a certain awareness in me, even though I was a child. I remember it vividly because I was moving back and forth between two very different environments. In New York, my family lived, my late grandfather, he owned a home, maybe a 10 or 12-minute walk from the old Yankee Stadium. And so I went to school in that type of environment. And then when the summertime came, I would go back to that segregated environment. So I had like an upfront, up close perspective on racism down south and racism up south. And when I was a child, into my adolescence, I was always inclined toward religion. I'm one of those people who, as a child, on my own, really, went to church regularly. My late mother, Rahmatullah Alayha, she told me that one day, some guys I met in the neighborhood invited me to church, white guys. And I went to church with them, and I came back and informed her at 8 years old that I intended to join this church. So I grew up in the church. I used to be go to Sunday school. Then eventually I became like the acolyte. You know, that's the guy that walks behind the pastor and light the candles and stuff like that. And I used to go to all kind of services. Then I became a teenage Sunday school teacher at 16. And then I left the church at 18. Took Shahada at 20. So that's like a perspective on how I was when I was in high school. You have to remember now, 1965, Al-Hajj Malik al-Shabazz, Rahmatullah alayhi, is martyred. 1968, when I was 17 years old, Dr. Martin Luther King assassinated. Also that same, by then, Muhammad Ali has his title taken for standing for what he stood for. The human rights and Black Power demonstration at the 1968 Olympics, all that was the same summer. And I'm only 17 years old. And all of this is impacting my consciousness. Black America waking up, no longer satisfied with the way things were going. By my first year in college, anti-war movement breaks out. Young people are turning the country out. My first year of college, school ended a month early because the students shut the campus down with demonstrations and whatnot. So this was the social political environment of my youth. And so when I became Muslim at 20, becoming Muslim was a progression from me, from having been, Christian, and a guy who was practicing religion as I understood it, and did so faithfully, and also having an awareness of the changing world and Americans of African descent turning up the heat, so to speak, for human dignity and freedom, justice, and equality, and all of that sort of thing. And so that was the type of person that I was coming into Islam. And so I was attracted to Muslims who were like that. And that's the path that I've been on. I remember I was about 21 years old, 22. I'm walking one day in Times Square. I was going to the movies. For you young people, this was before Times Square had kung fu movies. Okay, and I was going to a science fiction film. I ran into a young lady who I knew from maybe 17. And she's looking at me, we're talking. She says to me, "You're a Muslim now?" I said, "Yeah." And I asked her, "Does that surprise you?" She looked at me and she said, "No," which very much surprised me. And then I realized that the path that I was on really, and I still feel this way, that, Allah says in the Quran that when He intends good for a person, He opens their heart to Islam. And that's exactly what happened to me. I had no aspirations for leadership. I'm just a brother in the mosque, inspired and fired up like everybody else. Our time, like at MIB, Mosque of Islamic Brotherhood, with not the men in black. Our time, like the Dar Islam movement and others, was a time of soldiering. It was a time of training, physical, mental, spiritual training, because we viewed ourselves as being part of a continuum of progression. We saw Islam as the door that we had to go through in order to be spiritually free, psychologically free, etc. And I was not a leader. I was the assistant to a leader. My leader, Sheikh Al-Hajj Ki Ahmed Tawfiq, Rahmatullah alayhi, he picked me to be his assistant. I think I was maybe 24 years old. And so I was his assistant. He was the leader. And I served as his assistant from 1975 until he passed away in 1988. And then the community elected me to be the Imam in 1989. Again, even though I had been the Naib, and even though I had been, I guess you could say, prepped for the position, I was not aspiring to leadership. Even after the Sheikh passed, I was thinking, man, I could go teach college or something, make some money, and still practice my Islam, and I would be cool in the game. But other folk had other plans for me. And even as I say that, I'm reminded of the statement of the Messenger of Allah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said, whoever, aspires to leadership, wants the leadership, He said, if Allah grants it to you, He'll do it and you'll have no help. And whoever does not aspire to leadership and ends up with it, then Allah will send you a lot of help. So I'm a person who did not aspire. And because of that, Allah has always sent me a lot of help. And that's the only way I've been able to make it. And that's the only way I'm making it now. Inshallah, this coming November will make 33 years that I've been the Imam at MIB.
So Imams, if y'all have some questions, we have some, you've answered the ones that were basically in from the attendees. But Imams, if y'all have any questions, I have many, so I'll give y'all, we'll just spread the questions around.
I put a couple of new questions in the private chat. I don't know if you saw them or not.
Which ones? Okay. Farouk got some real questions. We're gonna make his questions wait. We're gonna ask real questions, no silly questions from Farouk. No.
Good.
Oh, he got some questions for you. You're gonna have to answer, though, Imam. He's been sparking you up since the time we've been talking a long time ago. So it says, Imam, was it difficult to become Muslim during those segregation times, or was Muslims more powerful back then?
Boy, that's a great question. You know, and we almost have to separate it from the North and the South. Okay, you know, you might not know it now looking around America, wherein the Muslim population here in America is all out in the open, bold and everywhere and ethnically diverse. But back in the 60s, 50s, or I'll even say from the 40s through the early 70s, it was Americans of African descent who were out with their Islam. There were other Muslims around, Muslim immigrants. In 1965, when in 1964, Civil Rights Act was passed. 1965, Voters' Rights Act was passed. Also in 1965, the immigration laws of America were changed. Before then, it was primarily Europeans, Eastern Europeans that were being led into America. There was no Africans. You know, you didn't see Africans coming in large numbers, continental Africans. You didn't see Pakistanis, Southern Asian, Bangladeshis. So, and back during that time, and the elders will bear witness to this, the Muslims who were migrating to America, they were mostly hiding. They were hiding their religion, hiding their religious practice. Women not wearing hijab, much less niqab and all, you know. So as far as the consciousness of the American public, the black folks were the Muslims. Either those of us who were following the Sunnah and those of us who were not, who were self-identified as Muslims. And so we always had to battle racism on one side, you know, white supremacist racism on the other, on one side, and then the anti-Islam bias on the other side. So if you go back, things that people take for granted now, wearing a beard on the job, kufi, names, kimars, all of that. Our people are the ones that established all that in America. I remember here in New York, we would go into a halal restaurant which usually had an ethnic name. Yeah, you know, it was Pakistani restaurant, wasn't halal, you know. And we would, and with our zeal, we would go into a restaurant and give salams, and the response would be like, "Shh, brother, don't, alaikum salam," you know. So we was really up against it, and I recommend for the those of you who have the up and coming generation of leadership, if you look back then, you'll see many lawsuits. Yeah, you know, and it's always African American Muslim American of African descent in court, you know, struggling for the right to manifest our religion, getting off on Friday so we go to Juma, as opposed to, and I'll just, you know, this is Black Imam's Roundtable, right? So I'm
and we hold no punches, Imam. I think you already know that. That's why you get in trouble a lot.
So for instance, here's a for instance. So now we have here in New York, big $1 million masjid, beautiful masjid on 96th Street and 3rd Avenue on the Upper East Side, Manhattan. But before that masjid, there was the much smaller masjid, the Islamic Center on 72nd Street and Riverside Drive, which is where Al-Hajj Malik al-Shabazz took Shahada. Back in the 60s, early 60s, they used to have Juma on Sunday. Not on Friday, on Sunday. Okay, so that gives you an idea. And so then these African American Muslims start establishing Juma on Fridays and, you know, pushing for the right to be able to do so. So yeah, it was much more difficult back then because Islam, anything about Islam was really generally new in many quarters.
Assalamu alaikum. I just wanted to, because I wrote down this question, alhamdulillah, and Imam Talib, alhamdulillah, you touched on it. I wanted to ask you, what was the impact upon the Black Muslim community here in America once these waves of Muslim immigrants started coming to the country after the immigration reforms?
I would identify it as first a lot of idealism. It's almost like if a man sees a very attractive woman, or a woman sees a very attractive man, and attributes to that man or that woman great beauty and great hopes for a relationship, and then becomes involved and ends up bitterly disappointed. And that's what it was like. You know, once I gave a khutbah at a masjid here in New York, and many of the people who attended the masjid were like of Southern Asian descent. So afterwards, a brother drove me to the train station, and he said to me, he said, "Imam Talib, do you mind if I say something to you about your people?" He said. So I was like, "Well, no, what is it?" He said, "You know," this is what he said to me. He said, "You know, African American Muslims, we have some that come to the masjid." He said, "You all have a tendency to make assumptions about the state of a person's Islam based on ethnicity," he said. He said, "You look at those of us who come from Muslim countries, and you automatically assume that we know this, we know that, we practice this, we practice that. And he said, and really, you all are ahead of us in what you know. And he said, but you make assumptions and then you create unrealistic expectations. And then when we don't live up to your unrealistic expectations, then you're resentful. He was very, very blank. He said, yeah, he was from Pakistan. He said, yeah, I went to Quran school when I was little. He said, but then after that, right in Pakistan, he said, I was in a Catholic school. So by the time I got up to university level education, I wasn't really practicing my deen. He said, then a lot of us, we come to America not even knowing about you all, not even knowing about the what I'll call the Black American Muslim, and we get here, and then we find these African Americans running towards what we've been running away from, and it really throws us off guard. And I think that's how I'll answer that question. A lot of idealism. I mean, there's some of the things, and if you really talk to the show enough elders, you know, like Imam Talib and others, I mean, we are idealistic for a long time, and a lot of us are still idealistic, which, but a lot also have become bitterly disappointed.
Imam, so there was a question, and I guess this question will feed into that question.
Yes.
So you said when you came into Islam, you mentioned in the African American Black Muslim community, African descendants of slaves. How do you say that again? I've been trying to get your phrase, and I'll be forgetting it every time.
Muslim Americans of African descent.
Okay, Muslim Americans of African descent. Good.
Remember it, MAD. MAAAD.
That's going to be harder than doing 3, 3, 13, 3, 21.
I took a page out of your bookie, man.
Y'all are funny, man. Y'all some funny brothers.
So you mentioned that there were American African descendants of slaves that were upon the Sunnah.
Absolutely.
And those who identified with Islam.
Yes.
Can you expound on that and why you choose one over the other?
Well, first of all, I'm just being historically accurate. I'm not, choosing one over the other.
No. I meant by that when you embraced one. So you are non-Muslim. You had both of these things in front of you.
Yes.
So you chose one instead of other because they were both present, especially in New York. That's what I meant by that question.
Yeah, it's especially in New York. New York was the city of the Nation of Islam. New York was the city of Minister Malcolm X and pre-Shahada, not that he's from here, but pre-Shahada Muhammad Ali. It wasn't until after I became Muslim, started thinking back on my youth, that I realized that a lot of my heroes growing up were actually from the Nation of Islam. The people who I saw in the Bronx, I grew up in the South Bronx, and the people who I saw being visible about what they believed and how they self-identified as Muslims were in the Nation of Islam. I didn't know at that time that the Sunnah and Muslims who embraced the Sunnah were the first ones to open up mosques in New York, that the mosques actually existed then, because in the popular culture, And in the popular culture, the heterodox groups, as opposed to the orthodox ones, were capturing popular imagination in the African American community. However, I was a person, as I explained to you before about myself, like I was a person who studied my way toward Islam. When I was a young man, I used to be, and this is one of the funny stories, origins of Imam Talib. So I was an actor. I was, when I first started college, I was a speech and theater major. People that know me from high school know that I was, everybody thought I was going to be Denzel Washington before Denzel Washington was Denzel Washington. And that period of time that I mentioned, late 60s, early 70s, was a time of what they call the New Harlem Renaissance. So one day, this is before I took Shahada, and after I was already interested in Islam, director walked up, handed me a script for a play that had been written by an NOI playwright who later took Shahada. His name was Marvin X. And he wrote a play entitled The Trial. And so in order for me to prepare for that role, I decided to put aside the kind of very generalized knowledge that I had about Islam and really familiarize myself with what Islam was, what Muslims believed, etc. So initially I went and I got like this big stack of material, Message to the Black Man, this, that, about 50 copies of Muhammad's speech. I read all of that. But I also knew, because the autobiography of Malcolm X came out when I was a junior in high school. So I knew that there was such a thing as the Sunnah. So after reading all that other material, I went and got one little book. It's called Elementary Teachings of Islam. And I read that book and a light went on in my mind and my heart. I said, wow, man, this is what I've been looking for right here. And then one thing led to another. Again, this is all like in the theater world. So one night, we standing out on a corner in Harlem, waiting to go into a place to do what we call rehearsed reading. I looked around. Everybody who was standing in this circle was Muslim, on the Sunnah. And a few of the brothers were in MIB, and one of them, Askir Muhammad Torre, he invited me to Juma. You should come to Juma, man. So I took up his invitation, and my first Juma, I walked in the door. As far as I was concerned, I was already Muslim, man. And somebody asked me, well, did you take Shahada? No, Shahada, what's that? They explained it. I said, where do I go, man? Point me to that corner. I went and took Shahada, my first Juma, and been on the move ever since. So again, to be more direct, I knew that there was a difference because I had studied what this is over here, what that is over there, the beliefs on this side of the page, beliefs on the other side of the page, and I made that decision. This is what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the Sunnah. And then you had these dynamic MIB brothers who are already in Harlem then, unapologetically Muslim. Beards, garb, politeness, bust you in your head if you get out of line, dynamic presence. Sisters, back in New York in the early 1970s, it was the women of MIB and the women of the Dar Islam movement they were the ones dressed in hijab. Other sisters were not wearing, and so all of that attracted me and led me toward this path.
Can you see that follow-up question?
Could it be that the heterodox people? Can you help me out? I can't really see it. It's a little small.
Could it be that the heterodox people? Go ahead, Imam.
Were giving more benefit to our people or more relatable to our people than the Sunnis at that time in retrospect? It could be, yes. Also, let me say, when I say heterodox groups, that would include like the Ahmadiyas, who had a lot of their dawah was more centered in the Midwest, Detroit, and places like that, as opposed to on the East Coast. East Coast, you had New York, Philadelphia, all these dynamic cities. So one of the things that I always keep in mind is a saying that says, people don't care what you know until they know that you care. And so the nation in particular, more so than Ahmadiyas or maybe even the Moorish temple, they had a narrative, a rhetoric, and a program that was attractive to those in the urban north in particular. And did that help fuel a curiosity about Islam itself in the Black American community? I would say yes. Because those of us who were practicing the Sunnah, if we had that same attitude, if we showed concern for the greater community, which in MIB we did, if we saw ourselves as being, Muslims in the family, which we did, then we got the same kind of response. MIB still gets that response now. Some of our people, even though they're on the Hawk, they see themselves as being separate from the community that they grew up in, the community that they were part of. They're not concerned, the masjid becomes a place of isolation for them, that nobody outside the masjid even wants to come into. But when you're out in the community, when you're demonstrating, love for the young people in the community, when you create safe zones in the community, then that creates a curiosity in people. Wow, that's what y'all believe? Tell me more. And then that creates an opening for you to give dawah. There's a difference in what I call verbal dawah and dawah of behavior and actions.
Imam Faheem, do you have anything?
Got rabbit ears tonight, man. I ain't got nothing.
Right. That's good. That's good.
Let's keep it rolling, man.
Hey, did you see that question from Farouk in there?
Yeah,
I put in the private chat.
I was really planning on punishing him to the end of the broadcast with like 5 minutes left. Didn't let him in.
By the way, how much time we have?
We have 1 more hour left. Do you got it?
Okay. Oh, yeah, we good. And
okay.
it would also help me if you all could just read the questions.
Okay, we'll do that.
Chat. Mm-hmm.
Inshallah. So, did you ever visit State Street Masjid back in the day? If so, what were your experience with Sheikh Dawood and his wife, Sister Khadija, or Mother Khadija?
Yes, and may Allah be pleased with both of them and grant them Jannah.
Amin.
The answer was yes. Excuse me. More as Sheikh Dawood became really more elderly, and after his passing, Rahmatullah alayhi, I visited State Street more and more. State Street Masjid, is now called Masjid Dawood, is the original masjid in New York City. There's an elder of mine, he's in his 90s now, Palestinian. His name is Dawood Assad. He used to be a director at the Rabita office in New York. He tells people that when he first migrated to America and came to New York City, this is like back in the 50s somewhere, that that he had a woman that he wanted to marry, and he was scouring New York trying to find a masjid where he could get married. And finally, somebody told him about 143 State Street, which by that time had already been open for at least a decade, or perhaps even more. And he went there and was able to get married. Back then, I don't know how many masjids we have in New York. Now I have to check with the NYPD and to find out. But you just didn't have all of these masjids, much less these big edifices and what have you. So yeah. Definitely went there. Great contribution to the establishment of Islam in New York and in America. The Dar al-Islam movement was born out of State Street Masjid. State Street Masjid is one of what I call the Masajid in America. You know, the word like Umi, the mother mosque, the source and spring mosque. If you study the history of Islam in so-called African American communities, the masjids would start off in the womb of another masjid. Same thing happened in Cleveland. Same thing happened in New York. Same thing happened in Pittsburgh. Okay, and so the Dar al-Islam movement was started by young brothers like yourselves and like I used to be, who attended State Street Masjid. Mother Khadija, Rahmatullah alayha, who continued even after her husband had passed away. I'm sorry, before I mention her, there's a photograph in a book of Sheikh Dawood, a book called Great Photographs of Malcolm X, or something like that. Malcolm X, the Great Photograph. There's a picture of Sheikh Dawood talking to Minister Malcolm X, standing in the United Nations. And because of my conversations with the elders, he was telling them, well, Malcolm, man, you dynamic speaker, you this, that, and the other, but you really need to tighten up your Islam, brother. He's an elder talking to him like that, and Malcolm is listening. And in fact, he did listen. Even after Sheikh Dawood passed away, Rahmatullah alayhi, his wife, who was by that time going very elderly herself, and when she finally passed, her obituary was in the religious section of the New York Times. You can go back and look it up right now. Go to the New York Times archive and type in, Mother Khadija Faisal, and you can see the tremendous work that she was doing. Muslim women's group, lecturing all over the country about the Quran and the Sunnah. I once saw, everybody knows we have this pictorial newspaper in New York City called the Daily News. And when I was a youngster, there used to be another newspaper that was almost a duplicate of the Daily News called, appropriately, the Daily Mirror. Okay. And I once saw a Sunday color supplement from the Daily Mirror, late 50s, spread on State Street Masjid. And there was, back then, they were mostly, though not exclusively, African Americans, Afro Caribbeans, and some Arabs. Please support the Black Imams Roundtable. I got my $20.
All right. With that, that's a good thing. Imam Faheem, you could do your commercial.
Yeah, do that commercial. I got mine, but I can't give it at halftime.
We had halftime. So Imam Faheem, go ahead, do your halftime show.
Okay, we at the halftime, you know what I mean? So this is the Black Imams Roundtable, the BIRT. You know, we get it out the DIRT. In order for us to get it out the dirt, we need you to plant the seed so we can grow. You know, make sure that you give 10, 20, 30, 40, $50 and continue to support, inshallah, that allows us to bring people like Imam Talib and us to continue every week to try to bring you the latest and the greatest with Islamic news and things that affect our communities, inshallah ta'ala. So go ahead and drop that bread. You know, y'all got loaves, y'all got bacon, y'all baking loaves in the oven. All we need is a few crumbs, inshallah. May Allah bless you.
So here was a good.
You're on mute, man.
Can you talk about the economic program and sweat equity of MIB that established the community?
Yes. There was a lot going on in New York City broadly, particularly in what they call the inner city. And New York had a housing problem back then, just like they have one now. Gentrification decimated much of the communities of the African American community, Americans of African descent, in New York, in Brooklyn, in the Bronx, in Queens. All of the poor areas were suffering from gentrification. If you look at the photographs, you'll find them hard to believe. The pitiful state of housing in New York after the heroin epidemic of the 60s and on up to the crack era and that kind of thing. So in New York, particularly in Harlem, in Manhattan, and in the South Bronx, some grassroots folk, activists and what have you, conceived and were able to implement a community-based housing movement called Urban Homesteading Movement, in which community groups were able to obtain property that was devastated, empty buildings and what have you, roll up their sleeves and go in and do the work to help renovate the properties, and then come to own them. There are books that have been written about this era now. And so our visionary Imam, our visionary leader, Sheikh Alama Tawfiq, Rahmatullah alayhi, he said to us at that time, because he was pushing us, he used to always say, this Islam, it's not just for you as an individual. And I mean, we were young at that time. He was young. He was in his 30s. And we were always concerned with community, community, community. We need to create a community, Muslim community, not just a congregation. We need to have community. We're having children left and right. And so during that period of time, we started our own school. And he said to us, we need to be able to live together, live within hollering distance of each other, instead of being spread out all over the place. You know, there's a Sahih hadith where the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he encouraged the Sahaba to live close enough together so that one lit a fire, you could actually see it. You know, you could see where your neighbors were. And of course, you know, after the Hijrah, we know how much of that really became a reality. So we were using that as a model. We were using the coming together of Muslims to create what is now being called model community. That was the model that MIB was following. And I might add that because it's important, and I'll try to remember to come back to this. See, that was during a time when non-Muslims in America, white folks, they were forming communes and what they call intentional communities, because this was part of the change in thought that was taking place throughout the country. So then we had a Muslim vision of that. And so we were able to identify some properties, including that same property, main property where we're worshiping right now. We were able to obtain some properties. We negotiated with the city of New York to obtain the property, and it really wasn't difficult because nobody wanted it. If you walk by MIB now and you see, you know, this property that's really worth a whole, as they say, a whole lot of money. But back then it was an abandoned building. The building that we're in now that houses our the masjid, Muslim families, commercial space. Back then it was an abandoned building. It used to be crime central for this part of Harlem. People being, you know, snatched off the street, dragged into the abandoned building and robbed, drug dens. I remember when we acquired the building and first went in to work, there was, and if you walk by right now, you see like the area, there's a staircase that leads from the sidewalk down to the basement level. We had to put on those chest high fisherman boots in order to wade into all of that garbage because it was filled with garbage. People, I mean, that's the kind of neighborhood it was. And so Allah blessed us to, I remember that we obtained a grant for like employment training, like right now. Big thing under the current administration is they're talking about infrastructure. America needs new infrastructure, so a lot of jobs are opening up. So we got a training grant from the city, and brothers quit other jobs and took the stipend money and rehab the buildings, the properties. And there's a book, I think it's called, I don't have it here in my office. I think it's called Urban Renaissance, the war against Harlem gentrification in the 1970s. And they talk about MIB in several pages of that book. And back then, it would be different, I guess, now. The brothers was doing that, work, and we didn't have like sisters putting on hard hats that kind of thing. But they were part of it. They would cook the meals and keep us inspired and that sort of thing. So it was in fact a communal endeavor. And now MIB, only by the grace of Allah, has survived 2 different periods of gentrification. And Harlem just came out of another. We used to, before we moved into where we are now, we owned a brownstone up the block on 113th Street. And that we bought, we acquired it. And then eventually it started becoming structurally unsound. And we went to the banks and nobody would give us a loan because to improve the property that we own. And it was because of gentrification. So now we're fighting Muslims in Harlem. No, let me rephrase that. So now African American, we're fighting to hold on to our old title. Like, how you'll have a champion in boxing and then somebody else will come along. Then that champion who's been around for a long time has to fight to hold on to his title. So, at one time, Harlem, we call it the village of Harlem. At one time, Harlem used to be called the Mecca of Black America. It was known as that throughout the country, the Mecca of Black America. So, I don't know how long you're going to be able to hold on to that title now because, I think it might have shifted to Atlanta or somewhere. I don't know, but we still try to hold up the banner.
Question, Imam. Imam Naeem,
Yeah.
you have a question first?
No, go ahead. There's some I put in the private chat too.
All right, I'll get that. I'll shoot to Sister Samira's question after this one. There's a saying that we often say, especially on this platform, right, Imam?
Yes.
So we often say that whatever issues confront Black people in America in general, in general, also confront and affect Black Muslims in America.
Absolutely.
Can you speak to that? This is something this is the whole purpose, really, of one of the main purposes of this whole platform.
Yes.
Our concerns be on the front, as not only as Muslims, but also as Muslim Americans of African descent. Got it.
Yeah, got it. Yeah, absolutely. Because we are they and they are us. Only difference between us and the other members of our family is Allah has blessed us by guiding us to Islam. And that saying, the younger people know this saying, with great power comes great responsibility. Okay, so we have been given great responsibility. Here's a story. Here's a story for all the da'is who are listening. I was talking to a brother one day, and he told me that he was on Major Street in Brooklyn. In fact, up the block from Masjid Taqwa, where, by the way, y'all ever heard of Sojourner Truth? So, Isabel Bumfrey, here's a quick Black history lesson. Isabel Bumfrey became inspired and changed her name to Sojourner Truth right across the street from where Masjid Taqwa is now. Okay, this is a little quick history, as I told Imam Siraj. So brothers were out in the African American community doing that dawah, handing out pamphlets, oh, brother, Islam, Allah. A brother told me he went to hand a pamphlet to an African American male who was walking by. And the guy said, man, I don't want that, man. Keep that. And the brother said, well, why not, brother? This is about Islam. He said, the brother stopped walking, turned around and said, man, because he said, man, you Muslims, y'all abandon us, man. And he said, I was never Muslim, but I always respected you all because you were concerned about the entire neighborhood being clean. You respected yourselves. You respected other people. You called us to your way of life. Now y'all don't care nothing about nobody but yourselves, he said, and walked off. So one of the things that you mentioned, Imam Naeem, so this amounts to, a lot of people feeling like the Muslims abandoned their posts. That Allah put them on posts, Allah assigned them, and now they've abandoned their posts for reasons that I'm going to speak about in a moment. And so the strong influence that African-American Muslims had in the community, in the hood, in too many cases, waning. And as a result of that, you see the African-American community itself declining, being overcome by all kinds of forces in spite of the presence of the Muslim. In Philadelphia's gang violence, what can the Muslims do? When you got drive-bys occurring outside of masajid. Oh yeah, I'm going to talk about it now. But when you have a group in DC where you got a LGBTQ imam with a masjid in New York, where we have what's called Military Islamic, which is a recovery, a support group for men and women in recovery from addiction. Years ago, when I first encountered Military Islamic, they were meeting in the YMCA, the Harlem YMCA.
The Imam did say they were having an internet problem in New York, so we'll see if his signal clears up. Their internet is down. Imam, see if you can log back out and log back on.
Somebody sabotage it, man. It's a conspiracy.
He was starting to heat up. They said, "Oh, we got."
Said they blocked him out. He said they was having. That's why he couldn't. That's why he's on his phone, because the internet is down. He said in his area. So he's going to try to come back. So Imam Faheem, I guess we can use this intermission for some. Where are we at in terms of our goal for today? Let me check.
Okay, I think it was at $340.
Oh, you saw it.
We only need 160 more. So listen, break them bread loaves off, leave the crumbs in the trail, and we'll swoop down and come on and pick them on up, inshallah. You know what I mean? Let's get this message. Let's get this goal out. Every week, we do the same thing. It's the same thing, Papa.
Same thing, Papi. Come on, give him money.
Yeah. As Imam Talib was talking, while I was thinking about the subject of this talk tonight, I was thinking about the ayat in Surah Al-Furqan. In the last part of that section, where Allah talks about the characteristics of Ibadur-Rahman, the servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and all of those characteristics they have. When someone's ignorance says something to them, they say salama. And then one ayat that says, وَالَّذِينَ يَقُولُونَ رَبَّنَا هَبْ لَنَا مِنْ أَزْوَاجِنَا وَذُرِّيَّاتِنَا قُرَّةَ أَعْيُنٍ وَاجْعَلْنَا لِلْمُتَّقِينَ إِمَامًا. And those who say, "Oh our Lord, grant us from our wives and our offspring the coolness of our eyes." And then another part says, وَاجْعَلْنَا لِلْمُتَّقِينَ إِمَامًا, and make for us imams for the muttaqin, the righteous people. So in general, we all have this capacity and this propensity to be imams, which, in general means like one who stands out front and one who's an example and a leader, but then there's a different dynamic that we as Muslim, how is it? Muslim Americans of African descent. Is that it?
Yeah.
Muslim Americans of African descent. And I like to use New World Africans, so either way, we all have the propensity to be like imams or examples of leaders, inshallah. And, in our experiences, we've had to take it another route and putting things on our back. Imam Talib mentioned something, and I was just reflecting on my own journey, and I'm pretty sure other imams can agree that it was something that we just never asked for, and for some reason it keeps following us around. I still, some 20 years later, trying to figure out how was an N-word like me in charge of people. You know what I mean? How did I get to be the one that's, taking care of people's needs or attempting to, service the people and stuff like that? And it's, it's just something that Allah grants you, you know what I mean? And I'm just learning to grow into the role and take if there is a such thing as glory, because when all the blame comes, everybody know who you are. When things go wrong, yeah, see the imam. Oh, that's the imam, But then when the so-called glory comes, or on the surface it seems like glorious, Oh yeah, that's the imam. Oh, that's the sheikh. We love him, man. That's my imam. That's my masjid. Yeah. You think it's glorious like that, huh? Yeah. So, and then that's when people be like, "Oh, he think fear Allah. Be humble." I've been unknown for 20-something years. What are you talking about? So I don't know, but it's just it's a remarkable journey to be doing these things, and just all of the glamour and glitz and all of the stuff that goes with it is something, man. Y'all gotta excuse me because in my office, this is one of the things I gotta step into my imamship and put some order in here, because the way they set my lighting up is by motion.
No, you got that extension cord coming from the next building. You can tell the truth, right?
No, we ain't there yet. We've been there before. But we upgrade a little bit. We got some kind of dignity, We're gonna pay our bills, But yeah, so this kind of thing, putting this thing on our back, and we have to have some kind of like discrepancy about it, that we can't really, disclose all the stuff that we got to go through, and that's just one of the elements of leadership. You just got to eat it, you know what I mean? And we got so many war stories and horror stories, and also just great stories in general. But this leadership thing ain't nothing to be played with. And I was just thinking, I remember coming across a hadith. I can't remember where it's found at, but it's something to the effect that the imams will come on the judgment day in chains. And I often think about that. It's like, man. I've had chains on in this worldly life, man, handcuffs. I don't want to be shackled on Yom Kippur. So it's kind of like a split. Like, man, let me just step back. But then at the same time, if I'm to be locked up, man, before it's like in the dunya, when you got a sentence pending and you gotta go in. I'm going all out, man, because I'm going to jail anyway. So, but just in a good way, I'm going all out to hold this responsibility.
I want to share you. I'm not going with you.
Yeah, I'm not going. Period.
Hey,
No, not.
Hey,
Hopefully,
I was watching. I don't know this joker, man. He made me so angry. I wanted to break my phone and grab him through the phone, through the wires, bring him and beat his lights out. This dude's on TV. Like this world is going crazy. This internet stuff is wild. I think this is a intent on making all of us gay and homo, especially the men. Like, just seriously, is horrible. The state of, listen, if that's what you do that. They pushing that stuff on people, right? Even the thug gotta be sweet. You know what I'm saying? I'm like,
sweet thug.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I might get canceled, but that stuff turns my stomach. I'm watching this guy. He's supposed to be an OG. I don't know where this joker was from. You know how they got all these podcasts. He's talking about how thorough he was in prison. Now, all of us been to prison, right? And I don't know, maybe it's just the places I've been. It just wasn't cool for you to rape another man. And no real gangster going to sit around and watch that.
Nope.
At least where I've been. I don't know these new places. I don't know. But you can't just openly take someone's manhood. That's not happening. You're going to get the lights beat out you, or you're going to get poked up real bad. One or the other. Check in. You can't do that.
Those type of dudes usually bounced around. They couldn't stay in one place long.
So I'm listening to this dude. They interview him like he's gangster. And he talking about his homie, OG, was plotting on a young brother. And he's watching it. And he's playing it out, yeah, because in there, I'm like, what kind of people was around you dudes? Right? Like, you watched this guy get raped. I'm like, and that first thing came to my mind, where was the Muslim brothers in that unit that was watching that stuff and didn't take that dude out? It's like, and I was just saying to myself, but the fact that he's still considered gangster, you watching people get raped, and you talking about you a gangster? And that's, it's like praised. Like, what the hell? We done lost it, man.
Maybe if the Imam comes back, right? I don't know if he mentioned it when I went to make Salat, but he used to be a chaplain for a minute, right? In the prison.
Yeah.
I don't know if he mentioned it when he introduced.
Yeah, he ain't mentioned it, but he retired from that.
Yeah.
No, it was just like to see the level we got to, like, just like, my goodness, man, you can't be serious, bro. Right? And I do remember times, not that I'm saying in all those years, I saw people, I know of people who got raped, but that was always during lockdown. You were in the cell with somebody, y'all done worked it out, and you ain't tell nobody. Nobody consciously watched that happen to you. Or you yourself were just like that. And that was known to everybody, that this dude is into that. And everybody like that was cut off. You couldn't hang out with brothers and be like that. Ain't nobody going, that is not accepted. I don't know, maybe it's changed. I'm talking 20-something years ago. I don't know what it looked like now. Maybe just, hey, men are wearing dresses. I don't know.
Hey, man, I remember before when I was a teenager, man, and I always thinking about going to jail. And you remember that movie Bad Boys with Sean Penn?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so that traumatized me, man. Remember the young dude, what was his name? Where they raped him and threw him off the top tier.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, man, I can't never go to jail. Let me get my grades together, right? So I was like, man, I don't want that to happen, And then I used to ask dudes, when they came home, what happened. They was never really clear, right? And then when I went down Jamesburg, you know about Jamesburg, right? You remember me?
Yeah.
Yeah. So and they had the paraprofessionals down there. So it was the guys that did a lot of time, and they was like mentoring us. So the old guy, we asked him about, like, if we went to jail, what would happen? He said, man, a lot of those guys, man, they was, they was gay anyway. You know what I mean? And then I remember when I hit the county jail, this old head I grew up with, he used to be so funny, but he used to always say this, man. He said, man, if you flip, you flop. So he meant like, you know, if you talking about you think you tough and taking somebody's manhood, then you gay. You're married. You're happy. You're gay. You know what I mean? And that means if you try to take it from somebody, you'll let somebody take you. That's what he meant. If you flip, you'll flop.
Dag, I ain't heard that in a long time. You remember Skillman? I forgot all about that.
Yeah.
Skillman, man. When he been getting in trouble since he was a little kid. He's a Skillman. That's a long time ago.
Oh, man.
That don't exist no more, right?
I think they got some type of, they switched it over to something. I can't remember.
So I don't know how I got that one. It tripped me out. You said something that triggered me with that stuff. I was so angry with this guy, man.
Yeah, man. If you play baseball bad, you either pitch it or you catch it. Either way.
Imam Talib is trying to come back.
Okay.
You know something?
Bring them back before we get canceled, man.
No, but here's the point. Who was that put that on? Someone put it on. They was talking to leaders in Africa about these movements. And all of them was like, we don't do that. We don't tell y'all what y'all do over there. Don't come in our land telling us how to do. We find that rejected. And as Muslims, we understand the climate we live in, but we got to have some standard. Like, you know what I mean? And sometimes to have a standard, you're going to have to take some pushback. Like, but if you don't take that pushback, it's going to come a time that they're going to push that agenda. I have two little boys. I wouldn't let nobody push that stuff to my children. Not without a fight. No way. Right? Now, for that, I can see me going back to prison because I'm not doing it. Yeah. Whatever was the punishment, I'm not doing that. You count on it. Yeah. Forget about it. I that's something that we have to take a stance and a position on. That's different from, treating people badly. We shouldn't do that in no case, no matter what sin a person's doing. But normalizing that stuff and making it something that we're afraid to touch, no. Just like you have the option of doing that thing, you also have the option of rejecting that thing, right? And we should never let, especially in this country where we have freedom of speech and right to religion and all this other stuff, don't let nobody take your stuff, right? Don't let nobody take your right to practice your religion. You don't have a right to harm, and Islam doesn't come to produce harm, but you have your position. And we'll get to the point where they'll intimidate us into their lifestyle. No, absolutely not. So, I mean, no way. I
don't know. This dark mode look kind of cool, man. I mean, I might keep it like this.
You just tired of getting up.
Yeah, I am tired of getting up.
Man, I forgot what cartoon that was. I watched. It was either Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, or one of them. But Popeye, one of them. But it was this scene in one of these episodes where the character drew a line in the sand, and he was like, "If you step across this line, it's really going to happen." So the other character, he stepped across the line, right? So the dude backed up. He said, okay, if you come past this line, it's really going to happen, right? All right.
He erased the line and moved it back.
yeah. That's what they're doing to us.
Imam Talib, are you back with us? Or you frozen again? Are you good? No? Do you got what? Oh, you don't got no Wi-Fi either.
It's New York City. The Wi-Fi is sky high.
You know what? Imam Talib started with that conversation that stuck in our mind, and it got him in trouble. They said, "Okay, we know what to do for you, Mister." Imam, are you still there? Imam Talib. What happened? Oh man. Yeah, like, oh, you want to be vocal. Here you go. No, but here he come again. Let's see if it works. Are you in, Imam? Man. Sorry, y'all. Technical difficulties. Imam, are you there?
I can hear you.
Yeah, you good. You were good for a minute. Man, it's not working. Subhanallah. Uh-oh, that means we got to come back next week.
They stay attacking New York. Mighty Joe Young, then King Kong, then 9/11, Snoop Dogg. Then they took the team out and put them in Jersey. Oh, man.
Okay. If y'all have any other questions, inshallah, please feel free.
Yeah, there was a few questions. I don't know. I think they might have been addressed
Yeah, for Imam.
Imam Talib.
Problem with this internet. Subhanallah.
Okay. All right. But there was a question that was just posted, just related to what we were talking about as a sidebar convo about the rights, young boys and stuff. Do you see it, Imam? It says, what do you see as the practice of rites of passage to making the lives of men and the youth?
Let me see. Go ahead. I see it. Yeah,
we have our sister show, which called Awoke and Grand Folks. That's on the first and third Sunday of each month. And we had one of the elders from Philadelphia, our brother Muhammad Abdullah, who was one of the influential members of the Jawala Scouts in Philadelphia. And he's been there, involved since like the mid 80s, he said. And Jawala Scouts is like training young boys, with archery, wrestling, and just kind of like chivalry and stuff like that. And they have a mission statement, or they have a pledge that they take. I don't know the pledge offhand, but I mean, when you talk about rites of passage, this is just the kind of things that we do as fathers and husbands. But that kind of organization is very instrumental in developing our youth. And I think some of the stuff that he's doing, we just need to capitalize on it. And he had mentioned another program that he's doing, which involves the Muslims going into the elementary schools as an organization and getting these kids while they're young, because if we don't get them by the time they're third grade, in third grade or fourth grade, they have the potential to be caught up in these streets, and I can tell you, you definitely got to get them by then. Because I remember doing this kind of work, being a volunteer in the school, and they had a fifth grader that they came to arrest at the school because he had packs in his book bag. He had packs in his book bag that I don't know if his family was doing it or that was just a cover, but whatever would happen, it was just sad. In fifth grade, somebody exposed that boy to that kind of life, and by fifth grade, you can already see some of them. You can almost envision where they're going to end up. You know what I mean? And, you got to get them second, third grade because, you still see the innocence in their eyes. You still see the fire, the delight in their eyes, the curiosity. And, and one of the things that's missing in these schools are men, and particularly black men, And then on top of that, you have Muslim men who have some discipline and stuff like that, and has some kind, wisdom to impart. We're badly needed, So I'm going to follow up with him about that program and try to, we try to institute these things that resemble rites of passage. And then outside of that, we just as a community, we just need to grab our boys up and bring them to the masjid. We have single sisters who have sons. Don't be afraid to relinquish them. Don't be afraid to let them go with their brothers, and they're going to teach them some things. I know sometimes we have gatherings at the masjid, and we don't let the little boys, they wrestle and stuff, and then a couple of them, you know, they start crying, and then they try to run upstairs to their moms, you know, and so we cut the steps off. We have somebody there, no, you can't go up the steps, you know, you want to, you know, and not really force them, but just like if they start crying and get hurt, you okay? We'll hug them, give them a kiss, okay? Then, you know, just give them attention. They get back out there like it never happened. But if we allow them to run to their mom, then their mom, you know, the nurturing thing come in. Oh, who done it? Hit my baby? Who, you know, and that kind of stuff. It reeks over into the Islamic community. You know what I mean? Where, you know, women are, you know, being overprotective of their sons. You know, in psychology, they call this helicopter parenting. You know, they call this helicopter parenting, where, you know, where the moms are so quick to rush in and swoop in and take care of all of the needs of the children, and they actually don't help them to develop resilience and stuff like that. You know, so they're not able to cope and able to deal with life's issues because they're so used to being pampered and comforted. You know what I mean? And that might be another a different roundtable discussion, inshallah. Yeah, it makes them soft.
You know, you just reminded me of that scene from the movie Ray. Remember when he was young and he was losing his sight, and he fell and he started crying. He was calling for his mother, and she was right there, but she was quiet, and she let him figure it out and stop crying, whatever. That's a perfect scene to describe what you were just talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. So you know, how do we go from that to moms is, you know, coming with their daughters ready to fight other school-age children? Because you see some of these videos online where the moms getting their children and they ready to fight other school-age children with their daughters and sons. Like, subhanAllah.
Yeah, I see that. There's even a case, I forgot where it was, Florida, Atlanta, somewhere down there, where a woman picked a fight with another woman, right? And she had a young daughter with her, and she handed her daughter her pocketbook. Her daughter pulled out the gun out of the pocketbook and shot the other woman. And that was the girl's second body. That was the second body she caught. She was young. She was like 14, 12 or something like that. And she already had 2 bodies on her.
Yeah, Latif. Yeah.
I think one of the things that we need to work on, and Imam Talib mentioned it, indicated to it, like before we can have truthfully a successful rites of passage or raising young boys, we have to develop strong men in our community to work with those boys, right? And I think if you notice his conversation, the whole climate was different in his era. And we got to come back to that, the thing of the time, because I know when I embraced what I thought to be Islam at that time, being a man was important. Like a soldier was necessary. You couldn't call yourself a Muslim and not be a soldier. Like, I'm talking about as a man, it just wasn't accepted, right? Even from those who were not Sunni, like in our community, Muslim, especially Black Muslim, meant man. Like it had a connection. Like you got to be a soldier. And when Imam Talib was talking about training and all, I remember those days. You got to get up first thing in the morning. There's training, there's martial arts, there's everything that has to do with defending the tribe, the family, learning how to do entrepreneurship, you know, and that was hard entrepreneurship, not go get like you be on the foot, on the ground, on the street, doing what you got to do. That was a part of like just being Muslim. Like a Muslim man was a man, period. And that's why they commanded that level of respect. Think about it, Imam Naeem, because, you know, you are very familiar with this. When Imam Talib was talking about the brother that was passing out pamphlets, we used to do that every single day and we have much respect. No one would think about talking like that, right? They would look forward to the Muslim brother coming and adding his piece to the conversation. That we went from that stage to like someone say we don't want, like, to disdain towards us. And I'm telling you, I believe that a lot of that came when we started following others and no longer having the idea of self empowerment. You know, I think that's important. So I think we need to work on really having a code of manhood. Let me share this one point. So I was doing some stuff in the masjid today, right? And I was thinking about this. I'm walking around the masjid, I'm working my tail off. You know, I was the janitor, not the imam. I'm only the imam from 1 to 2 on Friday. The rest of the stuff, I'm janitor, other stuff, you know. But I'm walking around the masjid and I'm thinking to myself, right, doing some work. And I was just thinking about something. I was like, I remember it was a time you can't not be on post. You get beat up for not being on post. I just remember those days. Like, you don't have a choice. You're going to be on post. Count on it. Whether you like it or not, you're going to be on post. Today, you have people, I'm talking about so-called men, who run from being on post. And you better not say nothing to you. Hurt their feelings if you tell them, yo, you're not on post. Like,
there is no post.
No, there's a post. They just not standing it.
Yeah, now you wouldn't think there was a post.
Did I ever tell you that story about when I was on guard in the ring?
Mm-hmm. Guarding the sisters' quarters.
Yeah. Do you remember that, Imam Faheem?
Yeah, you told it to us numerous times, man. But go ahead.
Yeah, I'm telling you again since you said that. Now you're gonna get the extended version. You know,
well, come on, hurry up. We only got 10 minutes.
Nah. I've been known to go overtime, and you getting ready to get it. Right? Look,
they got a button here that says leave studio. I'll bail on you tonight, boy.
I think about it, right? Remember, I was a teenager at that time. And it wasn't even a thought of leaving posts. It wasn't even a thought. No matter, and this is a young boy. So think about the environment that they had to be in, where you didn't even think about it. After a 24-hour day almost, from 6 in the morning to 6 the next morning, no sleep. And you ain't think about moving. It wasn't even a thought. And to today, you go from that to, you know, no accountability. None, zero.
Man, the whole thing done changed, man. Like, as Imam Talib was talking, I'm thinking about, you know, when I came home in 1995 and, you know, being with Imam Siraj, going to the Majlis meetings and seeing Imam Talib, Imam Abdullah Al-Amin, and seeing how they operate, seeing, you know, they always had security with them. The masjid was protected. You know, the masjid had people keeping it clean and stuff like that. I could never in my life imagine, for example, seeing, for example, one of the imams I just mentioned cleaning the masjid. The brothers would not allow that to happen. They would look at that like it embarrassed them that somebody would catch them allowing their imam to do work like that, right, in the masjid. Now it's completely different. I remember all of these masjids back in the day, right, when we are gathered in those masjids for Salat, Juma, anything, brothers are on post, right? Brothers are, you know, standing in front of the member, looking out the audience. Brothers are outside, making sure nobody comes around inside. Everybody's protected. And I remember one time I was giving the Jumu'ah khutbah here. And while I'm giving the khutbah, I see somebody walking on a property, right? And I'm like, to my mind, I said to myself, brothers ain't see that? So I made eye contact with a brother. I was like, in the middle of my khutbah. And I'm like, times has changed, because back in the day, nobody, that wouldn't even happen. Somebody would have been on him already, like, what you doing? What's going on? Who are you? Why you here? Right? But it's, this a different day now. That's why I said, like, being on post. Now people don't even realize there is a post that need to be filled. Like there's no post. What, you actually want me to do something? Like, it's completely different. Like people don't even know. Like the Imam was saying, like he said it was required reading to read Frantz Fanon back in the day when he was coming up. Now people don't even know who that is or what his books were, right? Now, when we came in, there was a post. You was required to be on it, and, you couldn't leave it. Now, they don't even know there is a post that they're supposed to have. It's completely different.
And that's why I said we need to work on that. Like, and I believe that's going to have to be like a national thing, because say individual masjids may not have the elements for that. So you may be at a masjid where in your particular masjid, the men are just not like that. You need to connect them to places where they travel and see people who are like that, right? And that way they have something to aspire for, but that aspect of just, and I said, and I'm not talking about just the security, I'm talking about what that does to produce accountability, responsibility, and manhood, right? Like, I just think that's necessary, because you think when we go to Philadelphia, right? They're conscious about our security and our safety in those events. Extremely conscious. So you notice is people on post, watching, being conscious of just being responsible, right? Making sure you're all right. I think that is extreme. Imam Talib is back. Let's see if he gets through. Imam, are you there?
Yes.
Okay, sorry.
Just in time for the sign off.
Yeah, I just give you some advice.
Yes.
Certain alphabet you can't use. If you use no alphabet, they control this platform. They will put you out. I'm messing with you. So Imam, we might have just a few minutes if you got it to extend so we can get some points, and inshallah we can reschedule again at your earliest convenience, even if your earliest convenience is next week. Whenever you're ready, the doors are always open for you. I mean, we need this. I'll give you an example. I'm gonna tell you something quickly that I and why I was always, every time I talked to you about coming. There was a big imam, an elder for us in this area in South Jersey area. His name was Imam Sheikh Ali Subhan. You heard of him before?
Yes, absolutely.
So we used to always talk about doing an interview, getting together. Me and him would talk a lot. And something always came up and we missed. He would be sick, or you know what I mean? And then he passed. And I was like, man, never got to get that information. Like, and he was always willing to share and give. But so whenever we have these opportunities, we never want to lose them, So can we go to the quick question, Imam? And we can talk about the rest. So we can at least have a close. You mentioned the stepping up to the challenges of the era.
Yes.
In your view, what are the challenges of the era for the Muslim Americans of African descent in this era? If you could put 3 challenges, just 3, in priority from your view, from your observation and your experience, what would be those 3 challenges of this era that we need to prepare ourselves to face?
One is the the dynamics of creating an operational unity across community or congregational lines. 1, 2, reclaiming our position of respect and authority in the greater African American community. And 3, focusing on the healing of the greater African American community and the Muslim community within that, because we have many unaddressed psychospiritual problems that are weakening us as Muslims and weakening the prospects for our progeny to be able to be Muslims in an effective way going into the future.
Imam, we're going to have somebody record them. I don't know if Imam Genius was writing them down. You know, Imam Naeem is our Imam Genius. He's the official historian and log of this platform, right?
Hey, I was waiting when Imam Talib mentioned those books. I was waiting for Imam Naeem to go in his library and pull them out. I just knew he had them.
You know this.
Imam, I mean, I was hoping that your wife Isla was typing them down.
Yeah, I was too. Can you repeat those 3 so we can get them and we want to build on them? Can you repeat the 3 priorities again?
I don't know if I can. The first one is creating an operational unity.
Okay.
That's 1. 2, reclaiming our what I'll now modify and saying reclaiming our moral authority within the greater African American community. And 3, healing ourselves and the greater community of the psychospiritual illnesses that are plaguing us.
So number 1, we just, Isla, can you fix number 1? Developing an operational unity between our communities. Imam Talib, can you summarize? Because we want to come back and do a whole platform on these 3 things the next time you're available, which you'll get, can you give a summary of what you intend by each one of those?
Yeah, the operational unity is something that we have been trying to accomplish for decades. And we don't have time to discuss it in detail. However, one of the reasons why we have these problems is because focusing on it, we've been derailed in focusing on the development of our community. These are conditions that created the MIB in the first place. Our minds are always someplace else. Priorities overseas somewhere. Respect for every scholar except our own. Always, and people using us for their agenda instead of us developing an agenda of our own and sticking to it no matter what. This is a great problem. And that's what I mean about operational unity. That's why we created Manna. Manna's not through yet, but we're trying to break through these things that keep us from getting an agenda that we can all work together on. That's 1. 2 is, the moral authority of Muslims has been weakened. We used to command a moral authority based on living the standards of Islam instead of following somebody else's standards. That's what I mean by 2. And then 3, We have psychological and spiritual toxicity that goes all the way back to the trauma that was inflicted upon us in slavery, that we're still not healed from. And that goes for African Americans generally and Muslims in particular. And if we're talking about everything else except for that, if we're devoting energy while these problems, and I was mentioning when I got cut off, if our dawah is such that we're not impacting the greater community on different levels, you know, so we didn't have the priority with addressing police brutality and excessive use of force. You know, so what happened? Muslims being shot down, just like everybody else whose skin color is like ours. We did not have, we've got Muslims who are suffering from all kinds of abuse. And you all know what I'm talking about. The addiction is still a problem in our community. And so we have to start talking about these things. I started to say before, when I first found out about Military Islamic in New York, they were meeting in the Young Men's Christian Association. I asked them, why are you all meeting here in the Young Men's Christian Association instead of in a masjid somewhere? They said to me, the masjids won't open their doors to us. Mm. And that's how we started having Military Islamic at MIB, because my response to them was, well, you got some doors open here, come on. And so throughout the city of New York right now, there are Muslims with addiction problems, and there are only 2 or 3 Military Islamic chapters in the whole city of New York. Yet, there are Muslims going to NA, Muslims going to AA. And so my contention is that if our dawah and our self-governance of our internal problems, if we're not addressing those things, then how are we going to give dawah to somebody else? How are we going to call people to drink the water out of a glass that's not clean? And we who are leaders, activists, scholars, we need to be able to answer those questions. We need. One day we were having Juma here at MIB in Harlem. 2 guys who are not Muslims got into an argument, and one of them shot the other right next to the masjid. Yeah. So how do we do that? How do we impact? Why are we talking about everything except for that? Those are the questions we need to be able to answer. And they're not new. They're questions that Muslims before us have tried to answer, and we still need to work on the answers to those problems.
You know, one thing, Imam, that and you are right on time, and I agree with. I lose nights sleeping thinking about these issues you're talking about. But one thing I do realize is that our elders who have tried this are in desperate. We are in desperate need for them to be at the table to bring the younger imams and leaders together.
Absolutely.
And have real conversation, right? I mean, and I think because as younger people, we sometimes, you know, it's an ego thing with us sometimes. Even if we don't say it, it exists. Like, man, get out of here, Joker, right? And all of us have a level of respect, even if we disagree with our elders. So you can play a big role in fixing that. You know what I mean? Like,
I do.
If you call us, we gotta come. Maybe if I call, some of us are not gonna come. Or if the others call, but if the elder calls or overseas, then all of us will come out of respect. Do you understand my point?
Yes, sir.
And that, I think that's a big issue. But it has to be really, really real conversation. It can't be superficial, right?
Right. It's got to be it's got to be real talk.
Real talk, right? And as I was telling, we had a meeting quick. I told you we had this African American Islamic reunion here in Atlantic City like 2 weeks ago, which was basically local, but our own community. And one of the things we mentioned at that was that in order for us to continue, we got to address those issues that we all know are dividing us, and we're all plagued with them, but we won't talk about it, even among ourselves.
Right.
We'll get together and act like those things are not there. And then when we leave, they're still there on the table.
Precisely.
So that issue, because I think one point you mentioned, I don't want to be long with it, but one point you mentioned was that we're being used for others' agenda. And I think every single one of us can identify that.
Yep.
Right? Where we've been used for someone else's agenda. What y'all did before us, and all the leaders were like that, they didn't accept that they led the charge. Where we are like some of us, not every single one of us, are like puppets in charge. We're in charge, but we're really taking orders from someone else.
Absolutely.
And that affects how we deal with each other. So I'm putting that out there because those are serious issues, but from experience, as you know, with the African American Islamic Summit, all these different things, we see that clearly, that's one of our biggest problems, that we need elders to be like, kind of like Don Corleone, I guess, right? You're going to sit at the table and you guys are going to listen, or you're going to sleep with the fishes.
Let me. So in the MIB past, when we were younger, we had a problem with another community, okay, and community you used to be part of, and.
Hey, don't tell that story, Imam. I gotta defend. Even though we made changes, I still gotta defend home base.
I know that, so I ain't gonna tell the story.
No,
what I am going to say,
Farouk is waiting for this, so you go ahead and tell the story. And out of respect, I'm gonna let it fly. Go ahead.
No, I want to get to how it was resolved. The problem was resolved because an elder who both sides of the conflict had mutual love and respect for, and that elder was Sheikh Dawood, rahmatullah alayh. So Sheikh Dawood called my teacher and the teacher of the people who we were having problems with. And he told them, listen, man, stand down, cut the crap. Here's the ayahs, here's the hadith, and here's the practical wisdom. And out of their love and respect for that elder, we stood down. So I'm saying that to affirm what you're saying. And you know what? We ain't got forever.
No, and guess what? We'll all regret it if we don't do it ASAP.
Yes.
Right? I mean, and we all want to do it. We just don't know how, to be honest.
I hear that.
We want to. I mean, and you know our differences that we have. And the imams on the other side, I know personally that they want to do the same thing we want to do. We just can't get outside of foreign influences on our activities.
Oh,
we all struggle with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, so that's going to take definitely some that's going to take some intervention from the elders.
Yes, sir. I hear you.
It won't happen normally. Allah is fa'alu lima yurid. He does what he wills. It can, but there are causes for things to occur.
Yes.
And I was thinking, even with us right here, like we have alliances, each and every one of us, with certain people that the other may not have alliances with. And because of those little things, we can't all come together to do something that we all want to do, right? So inshallah, that Allah will open that. Just for Farouk Thomas, you don't know Farouk Thomas. Do you
I know
about
his name. I know that name.
Yeah, he ain't important. Don't worry. He's one of those fake ex-Ansars who never really was on the ground. You know, when you ain't have to sacrifice, he joined. Now I'm joking. But he's been dying for this story. So just so he don't have a heart attack, could you give him a little insight to what you were talking about? He's gonna bust if you don't. And then he's gonna call me, oh, you stopped the Imam from having talk. I thought this is the Black Imams Roundtable. So let
me say this. So let me say this. When I first joined MIB in 1971, okay, and don't forget now, MIB was not formed on some other path and found its way to the Sunnah. Okay, our foundation from the very beginning was Quran and Sunnah, still is. All of the things that you so eloquently convey in your classes, that's our foundation. You know, and I don't often say it publicly because I'm dealing with a whole lot of other stuff. But you know, we're Ash'ari. We follow Shafi Madhab. I mean, from the beginning, back in the late 1960s. Okay, and you know, back in the late 60s, early 70s, we were not just us. I'm talking about African American, Muslim. Everybody was staunch on what they were on. And, you know, if you didn't like it, we could take it to the mat. We could take it to the street. We could take it somewhere. But it wasn't just going to be a whole lot of talking. Okay? So that community that no longer exists, okay, so nobody have to, you know, that it no longer exists.
Imam, let me, because I'm gonna get charged for this. The Ansar Dr. York group. Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
I said it. Go ahead.
So when they came to Harlem, we said, listen, man, y'all can't bring that stuff in the Harlem. Man. We got enough problem with some other folk, you know. And so they said, okay. Then they broke their word. So when they broke their word, we opened up a box and a black whirlwind came out. And, you know, it didn't, nobody was killed, nobody was, you know, but it definitely created a conflict. And so Sheikh Dawood, Rahmatullah alayhi, called Sheikh Alama Tawfiq. He called, you know, Imam Isa al-Hadi al-Mahdi, and he said, listen, man, come over to State Street. And they both went. And he sat them down as their elders, the elder of both of them, and said to them, certain things we're not going to do, certain things going to be intolerable, and this is one of them. So, and to show you the rightness of it. So then we had to go to court after that, because the other group fingered us. Okay. So we was all down in court, 100 Center Street. The judge comes out to hear the case, and he looks up in the courtroom full of Muslims. And the judge asks in open court, who are the lawyers for these two groups here? So the lawyers came, he said, approach the bench. The judge leans over, and I know because I was in the first row, and I could hear everything. The judge says, can't they solve this amongst themselves? Just like that. So they adjourned it till the afternoon, gave the two leaders a room, and the two leaders followed the orders that they had been given by the mutual elder. And when they came back, the truce was reestablished. You know what I mean? And we never had another problem like that. And there are people right around right now who is in the Nubian Islamic Hebrews, as they were then called, and in MIB, who are witness to what I'm saying.
To give you that, we have like a monthly meeting gathering in Philadelphia, the Black Imams Roundtable. So like every month we meet in Philadelphia and we have like a day-long program. And a lot of the elders come out, like that are 70 and above.
Yes.
So one of them, his name is Abdur-Rashid. And he was, so remember me and you was talking about this, and it was before my time, so I found it, like, because I know how we were, and I know how to have us young guys, like, on missions, right? So I know, I'm like, he was an elder who was like the older from the 70s.
Yes.
He told me the exact same story, just as you told me, and he told me y'all got out on him, right? he said they wore us out, Imam. I said, man, you guys, right? But he told me the same exact story. What was the last month in Philadelphia? He told me the same story, exactly as you mentioned it. And I remember him as a kid when he used to be on post. He told me the exact same what you said.
When he told you the story, did he include?
Wasn't you?
Yeah. Did he include the part where the Nubian Islamic Hebrew snitched to? Did he?
Yeah, he said it. You don't remember? He said it. He did. He said that they were serious about their business and we wasn't ready for them. That's what he said. And he's
what this shows, 75?
Yeah, he's 75, I think.
Allah.
How old is he?
I don't remember. He's about 75.
Yeah, he's definitely about 75. Maybe 70, between 73 and 75.
And see, one of the things that you mentioned, challenges, one of the things we must learn, the leadership, we must learn healing and reconciliation within our community, man. We must learn that and practice it so that our sons and grandsons will see it modeled. And perhaps, you know, instead of following the example of our other people who shoot each other at the drop of a hat, who disrespect each other and disrespect each other's, we can't have, and believe me, Imam, I'm 4 years retired now, 4 years, from 40 years of work in the jails and prisons of New York. 40 years. And one of the things that, and so the last jail that I worked in, the blood leader in the jail was an African immigrant, initiation scars and everything, okay? And he was the leader of the Bloods. That's where things have, and the other brothers, the African American and Latino brothers, they came to me and told me about it. So I went to talk to them. That's on one hand. On the other hand, my last couple of years, I had the incarcerated young men, I'm talking about young men, would lead the Taraweeh prayers during Ramadan. Because one day I asked them, because I'm getting tired now, decades running back and forth between the jail and MIB. So I said, listen, man, y'all gonna have to handle this. Who knows some Quran here that can lead to Salah? Several hands went up. I asked them, how much Quran do you know? One brother says, a juice. Another one says, 3 juices. So what does that mean? So these are sons of Muslims, not just African Americans, Bangladeshis, Latin, everybody's offspring caught up in the madness. And so they end up in jail for doing the same thing that everybody else ends up in jail. We have to find a solution. I was at a presentation with a sister just a few months ago who's a Muslim chaplain. Okay, she works with girls who are born and raised in Muslim households and who end up runaways and end up in the street and all of what that entails. We have to solve these problems. We cannot keep debating and practicing our Islam in an abstract metaverse. We got to bring it down to earth. We got to be frank about what's facing us, and we have to be serious about solving these problems. We have to. Else, our offspring going to end up like some of the offspring in these Muslim countries. Muslim in name only. If you pop questions to them, they give you all the correct answers before they go out clubbing.
Imam, here's our brother Farouk is firing the tough questions. We'll take this last one, but these are important questions in context of everything you told us, right? He asks, what happened to the Majlis Shura in New York?
Lord have mercy. Everybody knows that. Well, no, let me say this.
They're not in New York.
Yeah, in New York.
He's in Florida.
Oh, they're not in New York.
No, he's in Florida.
Okay. I need to give you the short version because I heard you and Imam Naeem giving a version of what happened that wasn't completely accurate. Okay, so this is what happened. I'm gonna try to give a short version.
Imam, long as you got it, we good. It's you. So whatever time you got, we got.
Okay, so let me say something. Let me correct something that I heard. Okay, by saying that the Majlis Shura of New York, from the very beginning, started off as an ethnically diverse group. It did not start off as like an African American. It was an ethnically diverse group that grew from out of a study group. All right, Muslims getting together to study the deen. Imam Siraj, Imam Amin, some other brothers from other communities, from ICNA, Islamic Circle, North America, some others, okay? This was like 30 years ago. And as the group grew and developed and brought to bear different priorities, okay? Priorities were different within the group. The Majlis itself was stable for a long time under the leadership of our brother, Imam Amin Abdullah. Stable for a long time. New York City was changing all around us. And everybody knows this. That's why I'm not, I'm just saying how it is. Then the very things that we've started, that we were talking about earlier, started moving in. The Amir, Imam Amin, son murdered by the police. Okay? Amadou Diallo happened. All of these grassroots in the African American community, problems started coming up, and they were always responded to in weak fashion by the primarily Arab and Southern Asian communities and their leadership. You know, if it came time for an action around Palestine, everybody, all hands on deck. When Salman Rushdie did his things, all hands on deck. Muslim gets killed by NYPD, African Americans left standing by themselves. War in Iraq, all hands on deck. War in Washington, D.C., African Americans and Latinos left standing by themselves. So as that unfolded, a new generation of younger people from out of the immigrant communities. And you have to understand, when you hear Imam, Talib, Abdur-Rashid to say immigrant, you have to decode that. That means Arab and Southern Asian, primarily, because they don't even count continental Africans, who are just as immigrant as anybody else, okay? So their sons and daughters started, it was their time, they start stepping up. They start stepping up. They start raising social justice issues. They start advocating for a more domestic agenda, as opposed to, without abandoning the concerns that we have as an ummah. We have some international concern. Nobody talking about, but it's just that there was a lack of reciprocity. So right around that time, the NYPD surveillance program gets outed, and a social justice spirit, even amongst the Muslims, starts rising up. I was the Amir then. I was there. I know. So Allah gave us, little victory. A battle is not a war. So Allah gave us victory in a couple of battles. And then right after that, the priorities shifted. And when the priorities shifted, the leadership changed again. And everybody knows that from that time until now, just like Brother Farouk is in Florida, asking, what happened to the Majlis Shura? I hear the same thing all over the country. And that's where we are now. It's a matter of priorities. What are our priorities? And in a nutshell, that's what happened. And Allah is my witness. And people in New York City know it. And even in spite of all of that, we're still trying to find ways to do things together. In spite of our differences, in spite of some hard feelings, in spite of some alienation, we're still trying to find a way to do some things together. Here's a case in point. So, in New York City now, 13% of the, last I knew, 13% of the public school children in New York City are Muslim. So that's about 130,000 Muslim children. All right. So now, for the past 3 years, we have a halal school luncheon program for the first time in the history of New York City, where Muslim children can go to lunch and there's a halal menu. That halal menu, as one little Bangladeshi child said to me one time, he asked me, I'm with a group of imams. We come walking into a New York City public school for a certification. Little Bangladeshi origin Muslim child runs up and asks me, is it true that we're going to have halal food to eat now? I said, yes, son, it's true. He jumped up in the air at top beard and said, I'm so glad because I'm tired of eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches every day for lunch, he said, okay? That program is one that a coalition of Muslim communities and leaders and activists to help to bring about. Before that, the New York City public schools calendar was altered a few years ago to include Al-Hajj and Al-Fitr. Again, coalition. Before that, almost 30 years before that, the parking laws in New York City were amended. And instead of just Christian and Jewish holidays, the 2 Eids were added. All right. Before that, in the jails in New York City, in a purely African American and Latino initiated situation, 24/7 halal diet was implemented in Rikers Island in New York City jail system. Only jail system in America like that. Started off African Americans and Latinos. That was the first battle. Then we went after the parking. Started off African Americans. Then grew where Muslims of other ethnicities. Why? Because we were looking at the common interests. What is an agenda item that we can agree on and all work together on? So that was when, for the first time, Muslims started making moves for some degree of political empowerment in New York City. That was the first time Muslims started having press conferences in the open, addressing a common issue. And it was only later, when it became necessary to address grassroots problems, that some people started easing away. So the lesson that we've learned from that is, if we're going to try to work together for the benefit of our progeny, then we have to find common items, common agenda items. And that's still facing us. So now, I don't want to get Black Imams Roundtable in trouble now. So now it's the LGBTQ agenda engulfs the public school system. And if over 130,000 Muslim children are in the public school system, how are we going to deal with that? It's a real. I remember, because I was there, when they first started exploring implementing that agenda in the public school system. I was called to a meeting of religious leaders, African Americans, with the president of the Board of Ed at that time. He said to us, listen, we're getting ready to try something different here. Got a couple of new books that going to be introduced. Man, we might as well have been meeting in one of those, those giant refrigerators like in the meat packing plant. Nobody was feeling that, to the point where the person who was trying to push it to us, who was himself a Christian clergy, he got uncomfortable trying to even talk to us about that. Now, it's a totally different situation. Now the people who would be uncomfortable in the room would be those in opposition to that. So these are the problems. They're real problems. We can't run away from them. We got to face them. And the only way we're going to be able to face them is to be able to do it together. And if we just keep the focus on ourselves, on this generation, what I call the Moses generation, the Nebi Musa generation, you know, Sheikh Alam Tawfiq, Rahmatullah alayhi, he used to say to us, listen, man, all of those cats in the Bani Israel that left Egypt with Moses, all of them died on the journey. Moses himself got right to the promised land, dropped dead, never went in. Joshua became the leader. Next younger generation who were born on the journey, they're the ones that went into the promised land. So we need to understand it ain't going to happen just with us, bunch of, you know, it ain't going to happen like that. It's got to happen continuously, older generation working with younger generation. And nobody viewing themselves as being the one leader or one teacher or one Jamaat that's going to solve all these problems, because that ain't going to happen. Could only do it together. And I appreciate you letting me go on, but I didn't read this in a book. I've lived this history. And I've seen what has worked and what has not worked. And I've seen the things that have divided us. You know what Al-Hajj Malik al-Sabah said, you know, Rahmatullah alayhi, we said we had the greatest organization of black men in America's ever had. And the niggas ruined it, he said. So we got to find ways to keep that from happening. Our problem is not so much outside, our problem is inside the house, man. Because we still haven't learned how not to be at each other's throats in the name of righteousness. I'm done, Imam.
That's a mic drop. I don't know what to say after that. That's it. Like, bam. So, Imam, with that, can you close us out? And whenever you get another moment, the door's open. Everything stops. Is your moment, because we need this. Really.
Well, Jazakallah khair. I'm deeply, deeply appreciative of the opportunity to be able to talk while I still can. You know, we just lost one of our outstanding elder African-American Muslim imams, African-American imams in New York City, Imam Umar Abdul-Jalil. May Allah forgive his sins and reward him with Jannah. And when he passed, I was really saddened by his passing, not only because he and I were close, but because I said, I know some other outstanding leaders who are ill. You know, I just had a brush myself out for more than 2 years. And I said to myself, when Imam Umar passed away, I said, this is the beginning of the passing of our generation. So whatever all of us gonna get done, we better get on it, man. Because the same way that my teacher, the teachings of my teacher's generation, right in New York, Sheikh Tawfiq.
Imam Faheem, can you put your speaker on mute?
Sheikh Tawfiq, Imam Yahya Abdur-Rashid from the Dar, Imam Al-Hajj, you know, from under those imams who are the Imam, they were all in a common generation, and they're all gone now. And Imam Al-Rashid said to me personally, one day I was walking with him, on the grounds of Sing Sing prison. And Sheikh Tawfiq was ill. And Imam Al-Rashid said to me personally, he said, listen, Sheikh Tawfiq is not going to live forever, and neither am I, Imam Al-Rashid said. And when we're gone, Imam Talib, he said to me, you, Imam Siraj, Imam Amin, and he named a couple of other imams. He said, y'all gonna have to step up and hold this line, man. So now I'm saying that to all of you. Not gonna be around forever, man. Getting closer. And yeah, you're absolutely right, Imam Amin. Yeah, we have to help mentor that process so that you can learn from our mistakes, our errors, our missteps, so that, you know, we don't have to try to start all over again, once again. So having said that, I guess we'll close out. Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim wal asr. Innal insana lafi khusr. Illa ladina amanu wa amilu salihat. Wa tawassaw bil haqq wa tawassaw bis sabr. Wa sadaqallahu al-azim. Jazakallah khair, ya Imam.
Barakallahu bikum.
Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah, Imam.
All right, we'll close out. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa
Now we
rahmatullah.
have an after party when we hang up, so you gotta stay. Don't hang up.